Hi everyone, welcome to Sweet Pea Sewed Inspirations. My name is Sydney and today we are going to learn how to do a knitted heart. So some things that you are going to need is I am going to be using some DPNs, and these are 5mm DPNs. You're going to need your yarn of choice. I am using some random yarn. I believe this is Lion Brand's Mandela in the color Happy. I'm also going to be using a tapestry needle to weave in my ends, and of course some scissors. So this is going to be a fairly beginner friendly. All you're going to need to know is how to knit, how to do an increase stitch, and how to do a decrease stitch. We are going to start with the top and then go down to the bottom. For the top, we are going to be making 2 flaps. We are going to knit those 2 flaps together, and then after a certain way, we are going to actually do a decrease. So go ahead and grab your yarn and we will go ahead and get started. So for the very first flap, we are going to cast on 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can cast on any kind of way that you would like. That is just the preferred method that I like to use. And so now we are going to turn our work, and we are going to knit in each of those 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So for row 2, we are going to increase on this very first stitch, and we are going to increase on this very last stitch. So how we do an increase for this pattern is we are going to go into that stitch as we normally would and knit that stitch, but we're not going to slide that stitch off of our knitting needles just yet. We are going to go into that very back loop. So it's going to look like you're purling on the back side. And then we are going to knit another stitch. And then you should now have 2 stitches on your right hand knitting needle, and we are going to pull that stitch off of our knitting needle. So now we are going to knit until we get to that very last stitch, which should be 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. And now we are going to purl that, or not purl, but increase in that very last stitch. So again, go back into that very first loop, knit as you normally would, go into that back loop and knit that stitch again and pull it off of your knitting needles. So now you should have 7 stitches on your right hand knitting needle. We are going to turn our work, and we are now going to knit in each of those stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So again, that was row 3. So for row 4, we're going to turn our work, and we are going to knit until we get to that very last stitch, and we will do another increasing stitch. So I'm at the very last stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and do my increasing stitch. turn our work. So for row 5, we are going to knit in each of those stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So for row 6, we will go ahead and turn our work, and we are going to increase in that very first stitch. And then now we are going to knit in each stitch until we get to the end of this row. So for rows 7, 8, 9, and 10, so for 4 rows, we are just going to go back and forth and knitting in each stitch. So for 7, knit in each stitch, and you should have 9 stitches on your knitting needles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So now we are going to just do that for another 3 rows. After you have all 10 of those rows completed, we are going to go ahead and cut our yarn. And you're going to repeat those 10 rows again. I'm going to go ahead and do my second flap, and then I will meet you guys for the next part. When you are done with both of them flaps, they should be both on the same knitting needle. And you're going to push those 2 together. And for the next 5 rows, we are going to knit in each stitch. And you should have 18 stitches on your knitting needles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So for the next 4 rows, just go ahead and knit in each of those stitches. Again, you should have 18, and I will meet you for the next step. After you have completed those 5 rows where we just knit back and forth, we are going to now start on our decreasing stitches. So we are going to decrease in that very first stitch and in that very last stitch until we get to only having 2 stitches on our knitting needles. So to do a decrease, we are going to knit 2 together. So we're going to take that first stitch and that second stitch, and we are going to knit both of those together like as you would normally do a knit stitch, but 2 of them stitches together. So you should only have 1 stitch on your right hand knitting needle, and then knit until you get to the very last 2 stitches. I am at my last 2 stitches, so I'm going to again just knit those 2 together. And then now we are going to turn our work, and we are going to repeat that again until you only have 2 stitches left on your knitting needles. So again, decrease these very first 2 stitches, knit until you get to the very last 2 stitches, so knit these 2 stitches together as a decreasing stitch, and we will just continue doing that until again we have 2 stitches left on our knitting needles. Now that there's only 2 stitches left on my knitting needles, I'm going to go ahead and bind off. So I'm going to take that very first loop, I'm going to slide it over top of that second loop, and then slide it off my knitting needles just like that. And so now you're left with 1 loop left, and you go ahead and cut your yarn, which I've already done. And then I usually make a little knot, so I pull my yarn or my tail in through that last loop and cinch it down. So that is how you make a knitted heart. Of course, you still have to weave in the ends if you haven't already. And you can block this if you would like. But again, that is how you knit a heart. If you did enjoy this tutorial, don't forget to give me a like, share, comment, or a subscribe. And I will see you guys next time.